My strawberry kisses, I could fly through the wind.
Storytime about the toxic boy that I almost started dating. So a little background information. Him and I both met on a set of a movie that we were in. Well, a few days into filming, he asked me out. So of course I said yes. And it was literally the most amazing first date ever. So he asked for a second date and I said yes, of course. And the second date was terrible. He literally just tried to get in my pants the whole time. So then he asked me for a third date. And for some reason I said yes, hoping that it was not anything like the second date. And he didn't show up. So I pretty much got stood up. And then he even blocked my number. So a few months go by and I end up moving in with my best friend. About an hour away from where I was living when I met him. Well, the one night she came home and told me that he had messaged her on Instagram, which I thought was funny as hell because my best friend did not swing that way. So she pretends to flirt with him and asks him to come over. So he drives an hour to our apartment and when he walks in, he just sees me standing in the kitchen. He immediately walked out. Extremely creepy story time on how my aunt passed away. So a little background information. About 5 years ago, my aunt had gotten pregnant. It was really weird because a few months before she got pregnant, the doctor told her that she would never be able to have kids. And her husband had been trying for years. Well, I think like 2 weeks after the baby was born, it had passed away. And I don't really know why. For some reason, my mom won't tell me. Which is weird, but anyways, after that, my aunt just felt like a lot of things weren't going the way that she wanted them to in her life. So she decided to get closer with God. Well, every Sunday night, we go to my grandparents' house for a family dinner. And while we were there, my aunt starts going on this whole rampage. She said that God's not giving her the answers that she needs, and I don't really know what she means by answers. So my grandparents kick her out because she's acting like a psycho. Well, the same night at 3 a.m. in the morning, we hear a knocking on the door. And lo and behold, it's my aunt. So my mom lets her in because she feels bad and feels like she's the only one that will actually listen to my aunt. So she makes everybody sit at the kitchen table. And she pulls out a Ouija board from her bag, like for part 2. Creepy story time about how my aunt passed away, part 2. So like I said, she makes us all sit down at the kitchen table and she pulls out a Ouija board. She was like, I found out how I can get some answers. I just feel like I need you guys around me for positive energy. And my family is very, very religious. Like, we don't fuck with that shit. But because my mom felt bad for her, she let her use it in our house. But my mom didn't want my sisters and I around that, so she just sent us to bed. Well, the next morning, I wake up and I ask my mom what happened with the Ouija board situation. My mom just said that it was really scary, because before she thought it was like a load of bullshit, and she said that her and my dad didn't touch the Ouija board, because like I said, they were very religious and did not mess with that stuff. But apparently, it said for her not to buy a house with the numbers 2815. Well, 2 years later, my aunt got remarried, and her husband ended up having 2 kids. So they bought a new house, and no, it didn't have the numbers on it. One of their kids accidentally shattered the glass door, so they went and got a new one, and it came with those exact numbers on it. 2 days later, the house burnt down and nobody survived. Storytime about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So a little background information. I was in my sophomore year of high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 6 months. And he had been best friends with this girl, we're gonna call her Addie, for about 3 years. Now, I had known Addie way before that, probably since we were in kindergarten. But her and I weren't like BFFs, we were more of acquaintances. But obviously, we became friends because she was always around my boyfriend. A month after him and I started dating, I decided that we had to set boundaries for their friendship. Because they had first period together, right? Well, every morning at 9:45, I would go on Snapchat and I would see a picture of them. And it would be her kissing him on the cheek. Not only would it be on her story, but it would also be on his. And I had her on Snapchat before that. She had never done that, ever. So he said that he had talked to Addie about it, right? And things were good for the next 2 months. Then they were forced to work together on a project. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, they had been forced to work together on a school project. At least that's what he told me. So I brushed it off because I was not about to seem like the jealous girlfriend. Well, the next day, him and I were supposed to go out to the movies. So I texted him right before we were about to leave, and I said, hey, are you on your way to get me? He goes, OMG, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. I have to work with Addie on this project. She's about to come over my house. So at this point, I'm like really pissed off. So I text him and I say, I thought you guys had a whole week to work on this project. Why does it have to be tonight? Addie knew that him and I were supposed to go to the movies that night also. He said, we just want to get it done really quickly so that way I can spend the rest of the week with you. And she's snapping me the whole time that she's at his house. off of his phone. So at around 1:30 a.m., I get a Snapchat from her on his account, and she's laying on his chest. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, she snaps me at 1:30 in the morning, a picture of her laying on his chest, and it's captioned, "Hey girlie, I hope you don't mind, but I have to spend the night at his house. He lost track of time working on our project, and it's way too late for him to take me home." So at this point, I'm furious, and I don't snap her back. So the next morning, I call my boyfriend, and I asked him, "Hey, is Addie still there?" So he says yeah, and then I ask him to put me on speakerphone. So when he does, I say hi to Addie. She goes, "OMG, hey girl, how are you?" And that's when I pretty much go off on this bitch. I tell him that while he was asleep, she was sending me pictures of her laying on top of him off of his Snapchat, and that she was sending those type of pictures to multiple people on his Snapchat because my best friend had texted me that morning saying that she thought that we broke up because Addie was sending her pictures of her laying on top of him. So I tell him, pick, me or her. And she starts crying. After a minute of silence, he hangs up the phone and then blocks me. Good luck to the next girl.
Story of the time a police officer pulled me over just to flirt with me. So when I first got my license, I would always go to Wawa in the middle of the night. Usually I would pick up my friend and we would go together. But this night she was busy and I was hungry, so I just went by myself. So I pull up to Wawa, and right after I got there, I see a police officer pull up. I didn't think anything of it. So I went inside, ordered my food, and while I was waiting in line to pay, I see the police officer walk in. He was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, really tall and muscular, and had blonde hair and blue eyes. Just an overall attractive guy. Right when he walked in, we made eye contact. At the time, I was 17, so I wasn't thinking like, ooh, arrest me, officer. I'm just kidding. But whatever, I pay for my food, go to my car. Then the cop comes out a few minutes after me, and he looks at me while I'm getting in my car. And I was really hungry and not trying to wait to eat, so I watched YouTube on my phone and ate my food in my car. So I finished eating and started heading home. Mind you, there was nothing wrong with my car. I didn't have tints, all my lights were working, and all of a sudden I see cop lights behind my car. So I pull over, and it's lo and behold the cop from Wawa. Like for part 2? Story of the time a cop pulled me over just to flirt with me. Part 2. So he stared at me at Wawa, waited for me to leave, and when I left, he pulled me over. Like I said, there was nothing wrong with my car. Also, I was 17 and he was probably in his late 20s. And yeah, he was attractive, but I was 17 and not interested in a 20-something-year-old. So he walks over to my car, but he didn't come up to my window, he came up to my passenger seat window. Probably because the shoulder was really small and the cars were coming by fast on my side. But anyway, for the juicy part. So right off the bat, he was mad flirty. Like, you know how the way that somebody looks at you says a million words? Well, his eyes were saying 1,000,001. But anyway, he was like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "No, because I didn't." And he was like, "What's a pretty little girl doing out so late without her boyfriend?" First of all, little girl. Is that him implying that he knows I was a minor? Nah, I'm just kidding, but honestly, in the moment, I really didn't know why he pulled me over, so I just flirted back until he left. Story of the time my friend made me lie to my parents. So I was either 15 or 16, and it was one of the first time that I tried. So we did a lot of that, and then we went back to her house. I started to get really paranoid, and it felt like I was floating, and every sound that I heard felt like it was echoing. I ended up getting so scared that I texted my mom and asked her to pick me up and told her what we were doing. My friend ended up seeing my phone and started freaking out. But my parents were always laid back as long as I told them the truth. And I told her that, but she still freaked out. So she told me to call my mom and tell her that we were pulling a prank on her so that I could stay. You could tell my mom thought I was lying because she was like, "Okay, well, I'm still gonna come pick you up." Mind you, I was supposed to sleep over. But my friend really didn't want me to leave. So she came up with this great plan. She told her little siblings to go up to my parents' car when they got there and pretend to be laughing because they fell for the joke. And my parents are not dumb. And her siblings were not actors. So my parents end up coming, like for part 2. Story of the time my friend made me lie to my parents. Part 2. So my mom was not falling for it. She was like, "No, I'm gonna come pick you up." So she gets to my friend's house. And like I said, my friend did not want me to leave. And she didn't want to get caught for... So she came up with this elaborate plan that her little siblings were gonna go up to my parents' car and pretend like they're in on the joke. Like I said in my last video, her little siblings were not actors. All 3 of them were under 10 at the time. So before my mom came, she rehearsed with them what they were supposed to say. She wanted them to say, "Oh my god, that was so funny. You guys fell for the joke. My sister and Mia told us about what they were doing and we thought it was so funny. We didn't know that you were gonna come pick up Mia." But instead, they started to fake cry. And it's so obvious when a child fake cries. They were like, please don't take me away." This whole thing was a prank. It was so obvious, so I was like, I'm just gonna go. So we get in the car, my mom looks at me, and I was like, she made me do that so she wouldn't get caught.
Story time about how I got arrested for stalking my celebrity crush. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. When I was 15, I saw my celebrity crush for the first time in a movie. After that, I pretty much went to all of his movie premieres and events. I was able to take a picture with him and even got his signature. To say that I was obsessed was an understatement. Now, here's where the problem began. He started dating this woman, aka another celebrity, and I pretty much lost it after that. At the time, I was living with my mother and she couldn't help but notice the change in me. I started staying out pretty late, mostly because I was out in the city looking for him. I knew all of his hangout spots because the paparazzi always caught him there. So I basically would hang out everywhere he would. I followed him to his house, I followed him to the gym, and I followed him to the grocery store, pretty much everywhere. I decided to sign up to his gym, and I started talking to him, and he started talking to me, and he asked me out on a date. Part 2 is up. After stalking him for a while, my celebrity crush asked me out on a date. But he didn't know I was stalking him, of course. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. On the date, he pretty much only talked about himself. He told me he had just broken up with his ex, which I knew that. And I basically pretended not to know anything about him. There was lots of awkward silence and I just couldn't help but stare at him the whole time. That's when he asked for the check and paid for dinner. I was totally expecting him to ask me to go back to his place. Well, when he didn't, I was really disappointed. So I did the logical thing. I invited myself over. That's when he told me that he couldn't because he had to get up early. After that, I didn't hear back from him at all. So I decided to go to the gym where I knew he was going to be. But when I tried to say hello to him, he told me to stay away. Then he asked one of the gym employees to escort me out. And when I got home, the cops were waiting for me to arrest me. They showed me pictures of me stalking my celebrity crush. Part 3 is up. As soon as I got home, the cops were there and they arrested me. And they showed me pictures of me stalking my celebrity crush. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. Since they had all this evidence and my face on the pictures, I couldn't say it wasn't me. They told me that after our date, my celebrity crush got a really bad feeling from me. So he decided to install cameras around his house and in his car. And well, that's when he caught me stalking him around his house at odd hours and following him in my car all the time. I was taken to court and told I had to go to therapy. Apparently, he felt bad for me though and didn't want to press charges. He did get a restraining order, so I definitely can't go near him. The good news is that I have another celebrity crush. Yay!
My daughter Savannah is the CEO of faking illness to get out of school. So when she does not feel like being there, she will go to the nurse's office and complain to them that she is really not feeling good so that they call me and I have to go get her. Well, one day after this happens, I walk into the administrative office and everybody is really concerned because Savannah is sitting in a chair like so dramatically like, hi, Mom. And like when I saw her, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And everybody looked at me like I was some really bad mom. Like, oh my God, why aren't you more concerned? But as we were walking out, she was walking really slow and actually didn't look good. So even I was a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Until we got to the car when Savannah looks at me and goes, you know what, Mom? I feel better now. And I was like, Savannah, are you serious? And she's like, Mom, do you maybe want to go to Starbucks and have like a girls' day? And I was like, honey, what kind of question is that? You know I do.
This client hasn't been able to get her nails done in over 3 months. She recently went through something traumatic and she let me share her story. So she was dating this guy for 5 years when they decided to get married. He was an accountant and had a business. My client noticed that he would buy expensive things like designer shoes and cars, but when she tried questioning it, he would just say that his business was doing well. Soon after the wedding, she found out he'd been cheating on her for years, so she packed all of her stuff and left. When trying to withdraw money one day, she found out he cleared out her savings, money that she spent years working for. Turns out he was never actually an accountant. He never even graduated college. To make matters worse, she lost her job due to COVID within that same period. Over the past few months, she had to find a new job, a new place to live, and a way to cope with all of this. She said doing her nails brightens up her day and gets her mind off of this craziness.
So I literally thought people were joking when they were talking about stepsisters getting with their stepbrothers. Turns out it's not a joke, and I just found out that my boyfriend cheated on me with his stepsister. When I was a freshman in high school, I got into a lot of trouble and ended up getting my phone taken away for 6 months and had no social media for a year. My parents literally didn't allow me to have Snapchat until the summer before my senior year. But I was allowed to have an Instagram, so the moment that I was allowed to have my socials back, I made an update on my story. And within a few hours, the boy that I had been talking to before I got my phone taken away swiped up. We started messaging, talking again, hitting it off all over again, and even though he lived about 2.5 hours away, within a week we started dating. I actually had a few other friends that were dating guys in the same town, so I was like, if they can, so can I. After dating him for a few months, I decided to invite him over to my dad so that they could meet. Both my dad and him hit it right off the bat. Chef's kiss. Also, we can call this guy Darren. I noticed that he was super weird with his phone and he would put it in his pocket anytime I was near. I asked him what that was about and he was like, well, I just don't want to be on my phone. It seems rude. It seemed like a logical response, so I brushed it off. But the next day, a girl messaged me saying that she was dating Darren. So my boyfriend ended up cheating on me with his stepsister. And also other girls as well. So once this first girl reached out to me and said that she had been dating Darren, I blew up in his face. She explained to me that they had been dating for a few weeks, so I ended up breaking up with him. But then he was blowing up my phone and threatening to unalive himself, so I got extremely worried. And I ended up just giving in to getting back together with him. And once I got back together with him, things were pretty much a smooth ride for 6 months. It didn't seem like he was talking to any other girls, and he would come to my mom's house on one weekend and then my dad's house on the other weekend. So we were seeing each other every weekend. And it was so nice until I got a message from a different girl, who also claimed that they had been dating. So again, I blew up in his face and I broke up with him. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And once again, the manipulator in him made a reappearance and he blew up my phone just crying, saying that he was going to end his life, and again, getting me to fall for his stupid tricks. This time I decided to go about it a different way and get all the social media passwords. I would log in and check periodically, but if you guys remember, I did not have a Snapchat. So the day that my parents allowed me to have one, I went ahead and logged into his. Storytime about my boyfriend cheating on me with his stepsister and other women. So once I was allowed to have Snapchat and logged into his account, I saw him messaging multiple other girls, including his stepsister. And when I tell you guys I scrolled up on these messages and found out that he had been sleeping with her too, this had been going on for 2.5 years before he finally called things off with me and broke up with me. We met up to exchange things and I gave him all of his stuff back, but he didn't give me any of my stuff back because he forgot. And he tried to give me his own stuff back, saying that we were on a break and would get back together. Because I called things off with him, he ended up throwing all of my stuff like my clothes, jewelry, Beats headphones in a fire pit and burned them. As if he was the victim. Like, what did I do to you? You were the one sleeping with your stepsister our entire relationship. After about 3 months, he showed up with a new girlfriend on his Instagram. And she ended up messaging me asking why he still had pictures of me all over his room and why my necklace with my name on it was hanging in his truck.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom one time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, excuse me, I don't remember her name. Can I please use the restroom? And she was like, no, you can't because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester. Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, Mom, I'm sitting in class right now. My teacher won't let me use the restroom. And she was like, I'll take care of it for you. And I was like, okay. So like 5 minutes goes by and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing and she walks up to it and answers it and she's like, hello? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then she walks up to me like so angry and she like slams the pass on my desk and she was like, since you have to go that bad. And I was like, yeah, I really do, thanks. And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
One time I had to babysit one of my neighbor's kids overnight. We're gonna call the kid Benny. The parents didn't really tell me anything when they left me alone with Benny, but they left me a note and they were like, you can only open it in emergencies. So at this point, I'm alone with Benny. It's like 11 p.m. and I told Benny, I was like, dude, you should like get to bed. It's late. Then Benny starts getting really red and he's like, no, we don't want to sleep alone. Sleep with us, please. I didn't know why Benny said us, but I was like, whatever, okay, like, yeah, I'll sleep in your room, like, it's fine. So fast forward a couple hours, it's like 3 a.m. at this point. This is the best part. Benny starts talking in his sleep and he's like, take her instead. You're not my friend anymore. I am not yours. And I try waking him up and I look at him and his eyes are wide open as he says this stuff. I was freaking out, so I went to go open the note that his parents said was only for emergencies. It just gets better. The note said, we're sorry for not telling you. Run him a cold bath. Call 911 in case anything happens. What the
One time when I was little I thought I could talk to trees. Because I had no friends. And I used to sit by them and say things, and one day I was talking to my tree friend called Kevin, and this girl went up to me and said, are you talking to that tree, freak? And I started crying and hugged onto the tree. And while she was laughing, one of the branches fell on the girl's head. Thanks, Kevin.